Right, great. So I would just say that it's interesting to hear what Ed said, also with the AMD removal, new features, and the general ecosystem integration, because I feel like the thing I might be showing in a moment is exactly that. It's just integrating with the rest of the things and making use of what other people have wrote for Vite as well. So let's get started with that. So yeah, the talk is called Embed Ember Apps Anywhere. Maybe slightly exaggerated, but it's still pretty exciting of what we can do today, especially since I've been waiting on the AMD removal for a year. And there's also a pretty interesting coincidence. If I remember, I'll mention that one. So my name is Bartłomiej Dudzik. You can call me Bart. I work at MainMother. I have a LinkedIn, GitHub. Maybe there is also some X account hovering around. I don't have any other social media. So the best place you can catch me on is probably LinkedIn, even though I'm not there either. So yeah, maybe what will work is shooting a comment on one of the repos that I maintain. So roughly the outline is I want to quickly mention how did it look like before embedding an Ember app, which was an experiment we did for a client about a year or two ago, which wasn't very pressing. So there is a little bit caveats around there, but I think it showcases pretty well how a bit of maybe not sure cumbersome is the right word, but how it just worked and what were the problems around that. We'll go through a simple Vite setup and a little bit of handling assets as well as showing off some basic to-do app functionality. So a Webpack case, so I have actually looked into this embedding situation back in Webpack, which was roughly a year and a half ago. And a nice coincidence here is if you look at the date, it's 2024 March, and exactly a year later, this year, also March, Ember Vite Code Mod was released, which is an effort to push people into Vite to no longer use Webpack and also get so they can not rely on AMD anymore in their apps, which is what I'll be talking about is enabled by moving to Vite, basically. So just real quick, the recap. So the Webpack build that we did was a regular Ember app, which was producing a single bundle, which was essentially concatenating all of the JavaScript into a single file with a vendor.js at the top of the bundle, because the vendor.js was what had the loader.js in it to be able to register all of the modules once everything is booting up. And then the usage was through the window object, because when the app was initializing itself, it would register on the global, and then you could refer to it through a global. Yep. Looking at notes, I think this is exactly that. And the app.js would there's a couple slides on there, I think. I can't scroll. It's okay. So I might have. We'll see. So this is the app.js. It's slightly modified. So this is where you normally have your application, but this one also has this class that wraps around the application, and it calls app create on it, which gives us the, I guess, application factory, which you can use to register some stuff on, and later we started by calling visit, or there's also a boot method for starting an application. And in the same file, down below is the registering part on the global. It just checks what kind of global we have available, inject register onto it this wrapper class, and yeah, and when it's loaded, it's available and you can use it in your apps. It also what's important here, it's also a pretty big burden on anyone who uses it, because there is a specific way that you can initialize it in. Usually the user of this embedded app would have to create a script tag, await, listen on the load event of the script tag, and only then they would be able to use the thing. I might have missed slide on that one, but either way, the blog post is there. There's also going to be a link with everything that I'm showing here, as well as the previous blog post. So yeah, we are on Vite. And this is me jumping slightly ahead, but this is after running the simple setup that I'll be showing in a moment. This is how it looks like. And this is essentially just a default Vite plus React. Yes, we are also on React, exactly. So this is the default React page built with Vite that embeds a default Ember app into it. And if you notice, if you're used to seeing new apps, new Blueprint apps or something, there is a dumpster missing as well. Styles are slightly messed up. So I'll be showing that as well. So yeah, this is straight up the usage. Hold on, I think that went too far. No, okay. So I think it should make sense anyways. I'm slightly lost. I feel like there should be something before, but we'll see. So yeah, so this is how you would use the application, this new way of embedding in a React app. The Ember app is actually built as a library that others can use, and just import it as a regular module and embed it as and just started provided a node that it can take over for rendering, and it just works. This is how we embed in the new world. So starting off with the implementation parts of the Ember app itself, we need to create an entry point, which doesn't have to be an HTML entry point that we have the index HTML. Now we can have a regular JavaScript entry point that then is compiled by Vite rollup, and which is what makes it usable. So here it imports the regular application in a separate file, which is called embedded.js, creates a wrapper class, exports the class, and yeah, and this is the entry point. The slight changes. This method also needs slight changes to the config handling. Regular applications, they use meta tags to store the configuration that they built. But because we are in the library mode, we can't have really, or we just can't rely on a meta tag to exist somewhere in the DOM. So instead, what we can just do is to hardcode the configuration. We don't need to load it from the meta tag. It can be hard-coded. And here it's just, it makes sure that some of the mandatory things are set, but it could rely on it could add more configuration or reliance on build variables over there and etc. When you have a generated, so this is the Vite config file, and the only change we need to do is to add a build configuration, provide rollup and input, which is the embedded.js entry point, and the output here is at least and the output to preserve the file names, so it doesn't mangle those. The dir is not necessary. It could be just dist, but here just for just to distinguish it for myself, especially when I was working on this thing, I called it embedded dist instead. And then on the Ember application, the last thing to do is provide exports, declare exports, what kind of files this package provides, our entry point that apps can import, and yeah, and this is how the ordering is slightly wrong. So and this is basically the end of the setup that you need to do for your application. And here is the regular application. Just put it up. This is an Ember application running. This is how it's supposed to look like. So it's supposed to have this dumpster and as well the styled text content. Yeah, and the next thing, yes, so this bit is interesting from the I'll go back to that later, because this is some interesting thing that I've noticed when building the welcome Ember page, because currently it's not. Currently, however, Vite recommends importing image files, doesn't really work with add-ons that well yet, but it should. And on this slide, what I'm doing here is actually editing the Ember welcome page, pages dist, to just import, to just do a PNG file declaration that then finally the consuming application, the React one, could understand, because it can do that, but currently with the how add-on builds work, it's not as simple right now. And this is why there also on this screenshot we see a different dumpster, which is actually added to the Ember application itself. It's not the dumpster used in the welcome page. It's another dumpster that I'm adding, which is just imported through, yeah, it imports the file itself without just like any JavaScript file, for example. Yeah, and the reason and it's slightly confusing, because it was also something that confused me, because when I was looking at this thing, it turned out that Ember welcome page was upgraded in between of me making this talk, and when I just upgraded the version, the Ember welcome page stopped working in the Ember application, but it began working in the React application. So, but just in a slightly different way, which I will mention in a moment. which is related to library mode. So yeah, after all that, we can see that finally this is the Ember application that has only upgraded the Ember welcome page and has the Vite setup that I showed, and the Tomster is now visible in React, but the styling is still off. So we'll need to fix that. And the styling is, well, we need to export the styles from the package. So we add styles exports to the package JSON, and then the styles can be imported by the React application. And here's how it would look like. And here's how it looked like when both when the Ember apps, when the embedded Ember app styles are imported with the Tomster. Yes, so I mentioned that the Tomster currently is embedded, or rather I should have said inlined inlined image, and it has an impact on size. Currently, when you just build, when you don't do any additional steps and you only rely on library mode will do will both build the application with without minifying JavaScript files, because it pushes that responsibility onto the consumer to do that, and it will inline whatever images you import. And here's how the sizes look like when you compile this entire thing. The embedded.js is the Ember application built, and down below is the final size of the React of the React application built. And the React application is smaller here because it's actually minifying this time. Just to make that clear, why the embedded application on its own is much larger. Yes, so because of the problems that I have mentioned around the Ember welcome page and its asset, here I'm adding a new Tomster, a new asset that we can work with and showcase and some more Vite plugin configuration. Yeah, so we just import the Tomster image and inject it into the template. Then there is a plugin called Vite plugin lib assets that helps libraries with handling assets that are not supposed to be inline, for example, because you might have a lot of assets, and if you just inline those into one big JavaScript, you'll end up with 50 megabytes of stuff, and that's not great. And that's something that the consumers have no control over in that situation. So instead, what Vite plugin lib assets does is when you use it, by default, it will scan, for example, for images, and instead of inlining them as base64 strings, it will instead emit imports. As we can see, it will instead rather preserve an import that we have in our code, and then it will correctly reference it in the final build from the consumer. So it's not a huge dent over here showing off, but there is this WebP asset is actually correctly taken out of the embedded.js bundle, and it's instead emitted separately. And we can also see the same result on the React consumer side. So when the consumer is also building the project using our library, it's able to see that WebP image and understand it, and it lives in its own bundle, and they're in the control of however it's laid out. Yeah, so this is it around assets, around handling assets. There are also, at this point, we have gone through, I guess, the fact that Vite can both inline assets into base64 strings, as well as what you can do to prevent that in case your library is asset heavy. And the last thing we'll go through is to show some functionality and Ember application doing something on the React side. And there is one thing that maybe you have spotted in the wrapper class, which is this config config property that is looking up a config embedded object, and it's and this is just a simple to-do app, but there is this configuration that React consumer can provide to the application, and this is how we expose this configuration to the different parts of our application. We do this through the dependency injection system, because the problem with booting up an application and communicating with the rest of it is that really the only interface we have is the dependency injection, because there isn't really more ways to work with those things. And this is the bit that I was talking about. The embedded.js entry point has this register, which registers config embedded, and options is whatever React side provides us, and it's set to instantiate false because it's just an object, so it's not a constructor. And this is how this functionality would have been used. It is used from the React perspective. It only has it declares a use state, where essentially the to-dos are really sourced from, or rather, where we have use state, which is an empty list of to-dos for React, and React can pass us a set to-dos that Ember, so Ember can push data from within itself to React for inspection. And we're just and here we are reading the length of the to-do list over here, as well as have some additional configuration, like can you remove to-dos at all from the lists. And here is a video of how that finally works. The counter is again on the React side, while the list itself is implemented in Ember. Yeah, uh, and this was and I guess this presentation is from the perspective of using Ember inside React, but there is also another side to this coin, which is Nick's Emberfest talk, as well as a blog post as well, which talks about using React inside Ember as well as I'm pretty sure Svelte inside Ember. So a shout out, yeah, blog post soon. So yeah, so you can check that out as well if you're interested in the other direction of things. Yeah, so this is the end of this presentation. I'm sorry for the mishap. I think I have some misordered some things, which I'm sure were ordered, but I don't know. I don't know what went wrong over there. Uh, and yeah, this is it.
Awesome. I'm sure there's a clap emoji in here. Oh, there we go. That's what we want. Yeah, woohoo, much better. Thanks for that, Bart.
I'll I will just also just say that there isn't really that much code needed for all this to work, and it's pretty clear of what's going. Just looking at the code itself, so there are links to. Actually, I instead of posting this presentation source, I should have posted the link so people can check this out. So let me add that real quick. Uh, there is a repo with all those things. Let me go to the references. There we go.
Nice. Thanks for that, Bart.
So you can find
Um,
all the source of it there.
I guess we probably have time for one or two questions if anybody has any, and then we'll get started into Brendan's one after another 2-3 minute break. Does anybody have any questions? I know you actually solved a big mystery for me, Bart. I was like, why are the outputs of the library mode so big? It's like even with the embedded files, it didn't make sense. I didn't know they didn't minify. Ah, annoying.
Yeah, by default they don't, and I think if I got things correctly, setting minified to true also doesn't minify. So
Yeah, I
so it's interesting. I think in general it makes sense to push this on probably the consumer, but still
I mean it's
maybe
all
not necessarily.
trade-offs. Yeah. I'm always tickled by the Vite documentation with library mode where it's like, we're not changing this. If you want anything else, just make a rollup config and call rollup. And it's mostly the same. It's like, oh, it's annoying. But c'est la vie. Any questions? No questions at all? Oh, a flawless talk. Not a single question.